thank you very much for bearing with us as we got a few things sorted out this morning. You had an opportunity to intro yourselves in the chat. I just want to acknowledge, thank you all for that. We lifted up in the chat those names, those city and states, the land acknowledgement where you are, and if you don't know that land acknowledgement, hopefully you went to the native lands map and had an opportunity to revisit that information. And any other thing that you want to acknowledge, please put that in the chat. You may have noticed that I posted my own acknowledgement of being on the Council of Three Fires, Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Ottawa, as well as several other tribes, Menominee, Miami, Ho-Chunk. But I also lifted up Clay County, Alabama, and Noxubee County, Mississippi, where my ancestors resided before the Great Migration North. So as we are introducing ourselves and becoming familiar with everyone else in the room, let us ground in those forces, systems, people, and organizing legacies which have drawn us here together today. And acknowledgement is one way to uplift these hidden or unseen forces, show gratitude for the people and groups, historical and present, that allow us to be here together in this space. And so following on the land acknowledgement, what else informs your own story, your family, ancestors, community, place, that needs to be acknowledged? We acknowledge that all people who have labored and toiled, we acknowledge that all of the people who have labored and toiled without just compensation on this land. We acknowledge that the wealth of this economic system was accumulated through theft and exploitation of labor and land. And so we take a moment to reflect and share on all of those folks whose shoulders we stand upon. So hopefully you've had a moment to kind of reflect and think about those things you want to acknowledge. Please continue to lift up those acknowledgements in the chat. And as we move forward, we want to just ground. So I want to invite us to ground and take those 6 breaths together before we begin. And so that first breath, breathe in. Notice your body and your breath. Second breath, breathe in. Notice the space you're in, and notice something that keeps you grounded and present. It might be a plant, a family heirloom, a photo, a glass of water. To the right of myself, I have a photo of me as a child. And to the left, I have a painting by my father when he was in college. Third breath. Breathe in. Remember why you signed up for this workshop. Fourth breath. Breathe in. Remember that you are worthy of your own bodily autonomy, of having your needs met, of the product of your labor, of thriving, of your liberation. Fifth breath. Breathe in. Notice the other humans in the virtual space who are holding their own intentions and expectations. Remember that your liberation is bound up together with our collective liberation, ours with yours. And sixth breath, breathe in. Notice your body and your breath once more. As we close this grounding, feel free to share any additional insights or acknowledgements in the chat. And we can shift to the next trainer intro and expectations slide, Afida. All right, so this is the Solidarity Economy 101 training. We want to go ahead and introduce the folks who are in the space to facilitate and support you through this process. We're going to go ahead and offer up a space for the other trainers to introduce themselves. I, again, am Mike Strode here in Chicago, he, him, on the ancestral lands of the Council of Three Fires. I'm a board member with the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network and the founding coordinator of the Kola Nut Collaborative Time Bank. I'll pitch it over to Emily.
Thanks, Mike. Emily Kawano, she, hers, on the ancestral land of the Nipmuc peoples in Springfield, Mass. I'm the co-director of Wellspring Cooperative and also the co-coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network.
Y'all, I'm David Ferris. I'm currently on the lands of the Creek and Cherokee, just outside of so-called Atlanta, Georgia. I hold down our economics and governance work at the Highlander Research and Education Center in Newmarket, Tennessee. And I'm also on the board of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network with Mike and Emily. I'll kick it back to Mike.
All right, thank you very much, David and Emily. We can go ahead and switch to the next slide, Hafida. This is not a training where we're asking you to sit back and watch. We're looking for your engagement, your participation. This is our second version of this presentation, our encore version. We've reworked our original idea to accommodate the level of interest in the workshop. And we hope that people are inspired to build upon this framework, bring their own groups together, and further engage and unpack these ideas, where you are, right? So we want you to take this stuff home. One of the participation tools we will be using multiple times throughout the session is Poll Everywhere, a word cloud. And we will provide you with the link for that shortly. You may want to keep that open in a tab or a window to your side because we're going to transition again through about 5 of those polls throughout the session just to kind of keep the participation going. And we'll be sharing the slides and the materials with you following the training, so don't worry about having to take notes for everything that you see on the screen. Our goal is to create easily, accessible, usable materials that you can take and lead conversations with other folks where you are about the solidarity economy. So we want you to have these conversations not simply here, but in your own communities and organizations. Some of the agreements we'll be holding for the space, we agree to share our work materials. We're seeking full participation. Our liberation is at stake. Everyone is a teacher and a learner. Self-care and community care. Go with the flow. When you're in your small groups, say your name and pronouns before speaking. Describe yourself the first time you speak. One mic, one voice. Speak from love and justice. Pause before speaking. Shift power relationships. Balance active listening with open sharing. And if there are any challenges, feel free to step out of the breakout room and come back to this main room. Someone will be here to support you. All right, with that, I'm going to kick it over to David for the small group check-ins.
All right, y'all. So before we break out into small groups, we want to invite everybody to rename yourself. So the purpose of this is to make sure that we know whether you want to end up in a small group with only English speakers, whether you want to end up in a small group with only monolingual Spanish speakers, or whether you are bilingual and you don't care where you end up. So if you can go ahead and rename yourself now, there are 2 ways to do this. You can either find your video and find the 3 dots on the top right and then click rename, or you can go to participants at the bottom of your screen, and that'll call up the list of participants. Find yourself at the very top, click more, the little blue button. If you hover your mouse, you can click more and then rename. And you want to add an EN before your name, kind of like I have in my name. If you'd like to be in an English, monolingual English breakout room, and name yourself SP, or put SP before your name if you'd like to be in a monolingual Spanish breakout room. So if everybody could do that right now, go ahead and rename yourselves. That will help our tech support immensely before we get into the small group. So I'm going to do a little grounding and framing. So you have a couple more seconds to do that. So what we're going to do is get into a breakout room and share our experiences around economy and governance. So we want to start with getting to meet a couple people. And we also want to share, like, what does it mean? What is our own experience? So Highlander is rooted in the methodology of popular education, and that means we start with the experiences of the people in the room. We look for patterns based on those experiences. We find new information, we collect new information, we build analysis through that, and then we make plans to change the world based on what we learn collectively. So since this is a workshop about transforming the economy and changing the very nature of how our economics and governance systems play out for us, our families, and our communities, we're going to start again looking at our experiences, and we're going to ask the question of, like, what is your experience with this economy and governance system that we find ourselves in, this political economy that we live in? Whatever you call that, or whatever it means to you, what's your experience of being a person who lives in this society that we live in? So we want to ask you that, and then when we come back, we're gonna dig into the solidarity economy framework. We're gonna share some mind-blowing examples of some amazing ways that people are creating alternatives to the current economics and governance systems. And we're going to end with action. So what next steps can we take to start building the solidarity economy where we are? So we're following a popular education spiral. And so to get us started on that spiral, we're gonna get into small groups. We're gonna ask you to share what's your experience living and being in this economy. What is this economy to you, and what has it meant to you and your family and your community? So everybody should have renamed themselves EN or SP if you want to end up in a English or Spanish only breakout room. And everybody else, we will be assigning you to a random breakout room. And if you have any trouble, you can always come back to the main room. All right?
Go to that link. So people should be able to go to that link directly. Is it in the chat already?
I will post that link in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. And the question is capitalism. What does it mean to you? So what are the 5 top words that come to mind? So, yeah. Okay, so clearly, right, the more time a term gets mentioned, the bigger it gets. So clearly, right in the center there is exploitation. We see inequality, extraction, greed, profit system, competition, money, individualism, white men, violence, right. So we will capture this, we will share it, but you can see that very, very central is all about exploitation, inequality, greed, money, competition, that kind of stuff. Great, so keep that in your mind's eye, and let's go to the next slide. And while we're waiting for that next slide, yeah, I just want to say a little bit about why we're taught we want to talk about capitalism and why we want to define capitalism. So I have been doing popular economics training, which is trying to help people understand how the economy works or how it doesn't work for, I don't know, 30 some years. I'm an economist by training. I've been a longtime member of the Center for Popular Economics, which is a collective of progressive or radical economists that are committed to helping people understand the economy, because it's been deliberately mystified so that people feel like they don't have any ownership or control or understanding about the economy. But really, the economy is much too important to leave in the hands of the so-called experts or the economists. Really, we all make up the economy, we live it every day, and if it is not serving our interests and our welfare and our well-being, as well as that of the planet, then we need to change it. So we also need to understand how it works, how capitalism, the dominant economic system, how does it work? So often I hear people saying capitalism is just too complicated, it's impossible to define. So I want to give you these 5 characteristics of capitalism. This definition, the Center for Popular Economics has been using for more than 40 years. It has really stood the test of time. It is simple, but it gives you a basic foundation. 5 characteristics. Okay. Number 1, private ownership of the MOPs. Sometimes we call them the MOPs, the means of production. So those are the things you need to produce. That's land, factories, tools, materials, etc. So private ownership by the capitalist of the means of production. Number two, wage labor. So those are the workers. And right there, that is a very particular mode of production. That's a particular kind of economic way of producing. And right there, you have class struggle, right? You have the capitalists that are trying to maximize profits, and you have the workers who are trying to raise wages and improve working conditions. So right there, capitalist worker, you have class struggle. Number three, profit maximization, pretty clear. Number four, commodity production, which is that you're producing things for sale, not necessarily for use. You're producing things for sale, and you're producing things for sale that are profitable. And the fifth one is that it's all mediated through the market, through market exchange, buying and selling on the marketplace. Okay, so those are the 5 characteristics. One alone will not do the trick, right? It's all those things in combination. So for example, a worker cooperative, yes, might engage in market exchange and they might do commodity production, but they do not have that class division. The workers are the owner, right? So a worker cooperative is not a capitalist enterprise. Okay, let's go to the next slide, which is, why does it matter? Why do we have to talk about capitalism? So the concern is, if you have a lack of clarity about what capitalism is, it can easily lead to just reforming and thereby even strengthening capitalism. So for example, the New Deal coming out of the Great Depression, right, with Roosevelt, it actually saved capitalism. Many of the ideas of the New Deal were actually part of the socialist platform. And it was kind of stolen and co-opted by the status quo, by the capitalists. And it was a time of great turbulence and potential rupture and revolt and revolution. And the New Deal programs really kind of helped to still that, that turbulence by making capitalism a bit kinder and gentler. So this is not at all to say that those programs weren't good, right? Public works programs, various kinds of social welfare programs. It's not criticizing that, but it is pointing out that without that analysis about what is capitalism, these reforms ended up saving capitalism. So clarity about our long-term vision, that solidarity economy is very clearly about getting beyond capitalism, because we firmly believe that we're never going to get to a more just and sustainable economy and world unless we get past, move beyond, build upon, but go beyond capitalism. So we're talking about transformative reforms, sometimes also called non-reformist reforms. And just an example currently is, you can think about the Green New Deal, which in its current form in the mainstream as it's being presented, it really doesn't challenge the current system, right? It does not challenge particularly issues of ownership and control, but it could. It really could be embracing and articulating the need for thinking about community, collective, democratic control of businesses and energy generation. So I will stop there and turn it over to Mike.
All right. Yes, we can transition. There we go. So now we have an opportunity to visualize another world. And as a part of this visualization, we're going
I see you talking, but I don't think we can hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
I can hear you in the English room.
Okay, great.
I can hear you.
All right. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and visualize another world. And so I just want you to, walk with me. Don't necessarily worry about the text on the slide. It's just here because you can take this conversation with you and do it with others. But just take a moment to close your eyes. Imagine your vision for a just and sustainable world has been realized. Breathe in deeply. What do you smell? What do you hear? Feel yourself walking. What is beneath your feet? Is it an asphalt sidewalk? Is it a wooden path? If you scan across the scene ahead of you, what do you see as you're walking? Cars, bikes, or something else? What types of buildings are around you? Are there parks? And if so, what do they look like? Who are the people that are using them? Who are the people that you can see? And are those people familiar to you? As you continue walking and you arrive at your destination, what have you come here to do? Work, play, visit, volunteer, vote, shop? Okay, pardon me getting the chat message there. Yeah, so as I'm sorry, apparently I was not in the selected channel for English. So that is why some folks could not hear me because I did not follow instructions because I was looking at a text message. So yes, let's revisit that visualization. And so again, smell, taste, hear. What is it that you are feeling as you're thinking of this world that is more just and sustainable? Who are the people that are around? What are the buildings like? What's the visual scenery like? Who are the folks who are using space, who are taking up space, who are engaging with the terrain and the world? And so as you come to sort of your conclusion, your end of that visualization of this world, that's just, that's sustainable, that's better, that's another. I want you to think about the values that are present in this world. So those values are things that I just kind of want you to pull out, a few values, maybe 5. You can go ahead and transition to the next slide, Hafida. So we're going to pull out, maybe 5 values from the solidarity economy that were present in the world that you were visualizing. And you can go ahead and transition to the poll. And we're just going to, in your poll everywhere, just go ahead and enter in those values that you come up with. So you can transition now, Hafida. All right. So what are the values that underpin your vision of another world? What are the values that were in that world you were visualizing? Connection, collaboration, joy, justice, sustainability, creativity. Yeah, and folks already see, you can upvote on this values page. So if you see a value that you resonate with, then you want to go ahead and, lift up that value. So yeah, that's something else that I can get with too. Wow, got lots of responses there. Reciprocity, collective care, intergenerational connection, peace, sustainability, community, collective well-being. These are all the values that are present in the world that we called this solidarity economy, this just and sustainable world that we are looking to create, we are looking to build. All right, you can transition to the next slide. Okay. All right. And so when we think about the values that we came up with, so someone directly put in there equity, and that is one of the values that are present in the solidarity economy. Some folks put in their community, some folks put in joy and justice. The values that underlie the solidarity economy are these 5 that you see on your screen: solidarity, democracy, equity, sustainability, pluralism. Solidarity, our struggles are matched, our struggles are linked. Cooperation is a part of it. Mutualism, reciprocity is a part of it. Democracy, deep participatory democracy in politics and work, community. Equity in across all dimensions: race, class, gender, ability. Sustainability, which embraces the rights of Mother Earth, which acknowledges that land has its own, set of rights. And pluralism, the notion that not all of the one size doesn't fit all in terms of the model. So it's a world in which many worlds fit. All right, and we can transition again here. And this, the definition that we use for a solidarity economy is the one that you see on the screen. I'll explain a little bit further about where it comes from in a moment, but that definition is a framework connecting practices and people aligned with solidarity economy values, the ones that we've just seen: solidarity, democracy, equity, sustainability, pluralism, articulating a post-capitalist world. So that's the definition for the solidarity economy that we use in the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. And that comes out of a 2-year consultation process with RAPES, the Intercontinental Network for the Promotion of a Social Solidarity Economy. And again, after a 2-year international consultation process, RAPES is a network of networks represented on all continents. But also it's connected to a global movement. So there's RAPES, which we've just noted as an intercontinental network. There's the International Labor Organization, which runs a social solidarity economy academy. There's the UN Task Force on the Solidarity Economy in Bolivia and Ecuador. Solidarity economy is a written part of their constitutions, and solidarity economy is part of several national policy frameworks across countries. So if you are a member of the Facebook group for the Solidarity Economy Network, you should see someone who has posted, something about the UN Task Force and also some of those policy frameworks if you're curious about that. And we can go ahead and transition to the next slide here. So the more important part is, how does solidarity economy show up in your life? So these are some images that were put out for the initial part of this workshop, and I'm just going to offer some background in terms of how solidarity economy shows up in my life here in Chicago. So I serve on the board of directors of the Dill Pickle Food Cooperative, and that food cooperative has been in existence for about 15 years. Throughout the pandemic, Dill Pickle has supported the mutual aid efforts of Brave Space Alliance by making food deliveries to their community pantry in Southeast Chicago. Brave Space Alliance is a Black-led and trans-led liberation center, which started out with support programs designed for Black and trans young people, but were able to use their infrastructure at the start of COVID-19 to support mutual aid efforts, food delivery efforts all throughout the South Side of Chicago as soon as the stay-at-home orders began. Brave Space Alliance was previously housed in a free community space known as Flood Hall, which also hosted Cola-Nut Collaborative Time Bank, Tenants United Tenants Union, and International Workers of the World Chicago chapter. The Cola-Nut Collaborative helped to launch something called the Cooperation for Liberation Study and Working Group, which builds culturally affirming materials for worker cooperative education in Black communities. Now, members of the Cooperation for Liberation Study and Working Group were on the advisory board for the launch of Shy Fresh Kitchen, a local worker cooperative operated by returning citizens. Shy Fresh Kitchen, and we're just kind of going around in a circle, so almost at the end of that circle, Shy Fresh Kitchen provided mutual aid meal delivery service when Chicago Public Schools stopped offering lunch pickup service during the uprisings against police violence. And Shy Fresh sources their produce for their meals from Urban Growers Collective and Urban Farm in Southeast Chicago. Urban Growers Collective sells produce back to the Dill Pickle Food Cooperative. So the solidarity economy is all of these sort of these institutions that are connected to each other across sectors, you know, of production, of reproduction, distribution, exchange, consumption, finance, governance, that are all servicing each other. This is an ecosystem conversation. So food cooperatives, mutual aid liberation centers, time banks, tenant unions, worker cooperatives, urban farms, labor unions, an ecosystem nourishing all of its parts. And, you know, it doesn't stop there. It can go on. It can go on to Chicago Community Loan Fund. It can go on to the housing cooperatives that are connected to the Chicago Community Loan Fund that receive support for share loans. It can go on to the Self-Help Federal Credit Union, which was able to come in and save some community banks that were about to close during a previous financial crisis. So all of these pieces, all of these things are connected. And even on a sort of deeper note, the 39th Ward participatory budgeting process, which was which supported or voted to support the redevelopment of the front end, the Welcoming Center for a local park in Albany Park neighborhood of Chicago. So all of these things are part of the solidarity economy, and all of these things are things that are trying to grapple with those values that you saw on the screen earlier. And that's the ecosystem that we are trying to cultivate within the solidarity economy. Huge foundation to build on, lots of opportunity to engage, but do the mapping in your community. What's happening where you live? What are the things that you can connect to? What are the processes that are already in place? And if they're in place, and if they're not doing what you need them to do, how can you enhance them? How can you change them? And so we can go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and pitch it back to Emily for different systems.
Great, thanks, Mike. So yeah, pluralism. When we talk about pluralism in the solidarity economy, we want to emphasize that this is not a blueprint. It's not dogmatic. There are many, many different ways to get there. There are many pathways to building a more just, democratic, and sustainable world. So you've heard a lot of different terms, I'm sure. You've heard green and community economy. You've heard new economy and people's economy and donut economy and regenerative economy and bottom-up economy. And, you know, there are many, 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 many different terms. And some of them are fully aligned with solidarity economy. Solidarity economy is a very big tent. And so under the solidarity economy umbrella, we have folks that are socialists, democratic socialists, right? So not centralized state run centralized power socialism, but democratic socialism of various stripes. There are anarchists, there are people that have no particular ism at all. They don't particularly, haven't really said, I'm a thisist or thatist. And that's all fine. There's no need to necessarily choose. Some of these different pathways are partially aligned. And I say that because something like, take donut economics, for example. For those of you who know what it is, you'll know that it's really focused on sustainability and the finite limits carrying capacity of the planet. So for those of you not familiar with it, that's a thumbnail. But it really doesn't say anything about the economic system. It really doesn't say anything about capitalism. And that's why I say it could be aligned, but it's neutral about capitalism. And we are very clear, and we do have an analysis in Solidarity Economy about why capitalism is inherently not going to get us there. This is not to throw stones at people who believe that capitalism can be reformed. I mean, that is a position. That's a position. It's a perfectly valid position. We don't want to put people down. We just happen to disagree. We're taking a different position, that we don't believe that capitalism can be reformed to get us there, to our other world. And we really believe we need to move beyond it. Okay, next slide. And so amongst all these different pathways and all these different labels, ever multiplying, why do we actually want to make a case for using solidarity economy? The reason why we want to make this case is that solidarity economy has a lot of legs already on a global scale. There's a lot of there. Okay, so the first bullet point, it's a world in which many worlds fit, right? It's not dogmatic. It's a really big tent. It's also very humble. We don't believe that we have all the answers. So we should be humble. We should be cautious about condemning or slamming other points of view. We should honor differences. We should try different things. There's so much work to be done, right? So certainly the left has a long history of engaging in a circular firing squad where we fight amongst ourselves because you're not supporting my view. And so solidarity economy, in being pluralist, is really avoids some of that kind of dogmatism and looks to the real world. What's actually working? So I already mentioned it's a very big tent. It overlaps, it includes or overlaps with many other approaches. It is very clearly defined as post-capitalist, grounded in interconnected values, which also leads us to be anchored in the real world, right? So it's a bottom-up, grassroots, informed, and largely led global movement. And so there's a phrase that it is a experiences or practices in search of a theory. So in some ways it provides this framework to connect all of these, this vast, as Mike talked about, this vast foundation of practices, solidarity economy practices, so that we can see each other as working on the same project of getting to a more just and sustainable and democratic world. And so finally, it is a growing global movement. Again, as Mike talked about, like some of the specific institutions that have embraced solidarity economy, as well as policy work on a national scale in a number of different countries. In the United States, I would say we are at a point, I think we're at a point of takeoff. Right now, we're seeing a lot more attention, a lot more discussion. There's more funding. I can see that there are organizations that are getting funding explicitly for doing solidarity economy work. There are investment funds that are investing in solidarity economy work. I've been asked to be a reader on some papers for art and culture philanthropy or foundations, as well as some academic departments that are building out this kind of education. So it's gaining a lot of traction. And we are really invested in making sure, we don't want to be purists, right? But we also want to make sure that solidarity economy doesn't get redefined in a way that makes it just reformist of capitalism. So that's part of why we feel like it's important to go over this. At the same time, it is a really, really, really big tent. So there is a definition, but there's really a lot of room within that. There's really a lot of room to allow for local, cultural, historic specificities. So solidarity economy will look different in different places and in different times and in different cultures. But it will all align with that very broad definitional umbrella.
All right, so on your screen right now, we have a pinkish purple illustration of people experiencing a solidarity economy. Remember, one of the values of solidarity economy is pluralism, so this is just an image that someone else came up with of what they would see in a solidarity economy. It may not match your own, but we're going to, engage with it and wrestle with it a bit. So there are several buildings here, different names, folks going about their day on bikes, walking, or by other modes of transport. We see a building with a sign that says trade school, where we can imagine people bartering their skills and knowledge with one another. Next door to that is a sign that says community radio, where people might go to share ideas or music over the public airwaves. Traveling across the left side of the scene, there is a study center where further learning might happen, including the Cooperation for Liberation Study and Working Group. And that sits next to a food cooperative, which ideally treats its workers fairly and caters to people with different dietary restrictions. All throughout this image, activity is happening in the makerspace, the medic tent, the credit union, a worker-owned cafe, but maybe something is missing for you. It is possible that we have not addressed all of the needs that you have. As you examine the image, what's missing? What does it need to make you feel whole, acknowledged, or validated? And so we're going to go into another poll. If you want to go ahead and shift to the next slide, we're going to see what's missing from this image of solidarity economy. So as you reflect on that image, we have a poll up on the screen. Feel free to enter in. What do you see as missing from this image of the solidarity economy? And I see some questions coming in the chat. How does the wheelchair user go up the stairs? Is there a greenhouse on top of the study center? It looks like it, and a pool. In the poll everywhere, we're getting some stuff in for accessibility, community, sports and fitness, disability, green space, nature, trees, gardens, theater, performance, arts. I saw a dinosaur somewhere in there, but I can't really get, since it's disconnected, I'm not sure what that was about. Ramps, non-human, racial, cultural. So space is coming up as a prominent word, we'll unpack that later. Let's see, in the chat, I'm seeing, we'll go back to the image in a moment, just so that folks can get one more glance at it. But what we're seeing, let's see, nature everywhere, please. We've got some +1s for nature, green space, childcare. All right, and so we can go ahead and begin to lock the poll there. All right, and before we go to the next activity, we can go back one step, Hafida, and we'll just look at the image again. So that's just, and you will have a link to these slides, so you'll be able to kind of, wrestle with this image yourself. This image is by Caroline Woolard. It's an image of the solidarity economy by their design. So you'll have an opportunity to wrestle with this image. It is also available on Caroline's website, in a high quality version. So you can go ahead forward, Tafida. Forward again there. Oh, pardon me. Oh, okay. Over to David. Sorry, I thought you had a slide.
All right, y'all. So we are going to get into breakout rooms to give you a chance to look at some examples of the solidarity economy, to dig into 4 to 5 examples, like a case studies that you're going to read together in your small group. When you get into your group, you can read the 4 to 5 cards quietly, like each person can read silently, or you can have each person in your group present a card if you want. And then what you're going to do in your group is discuss what do you see as mind-blowing about these examples? What do you already see reflected in your community? Like which of these things do you already know about are in your community? Or which could be possible where you live in your community? And then you're gonna, as a group, pick your group's most mind-blowing example and pick someone who's willing to share back a brief summary of what it was and why it was mind-blowing to your group when we come back from the small groups in the chat. We will also be asking what makes these possible? Like what are the ingredients that go into the recipe for solidarity economy that make these amazing examples possible? And we'll be doing a word cloud based on that question after we get back from the small groups too. So, Afida, will you bring up the slide share for the Beautiful Solutions slide deck?
Yes, you want me to bring up the slide share or the link?
Slide share, and then
Okay.
I can post the link in the chat.
Yes. Okay.
So imagine that you get into a group that's labeled Group A. You're going to go to the slides that are labeled Group A, which are the forest green slides, right? And you'll read through those 4 or 5 slides together as a group, and then discuss which ones are mind-blowing, why, and what makes these possible. If you get into a group labeled F, you'll be going to the purple slides or the grape slides, and discussing those. So are there any questions before we get people into small groups? Afida's working on putting the groups together right now, and I'm going to put stuff in the chat, which is going to be the link to join the slideshow so that you can read along these amazing examples. And just want to share that these examples come from the Beautiful Solutions project, which is a project that some colleagues and comrades that we know and love have worked to compile. And they're also from the Mapping Our Futures curriculum from the Highlander Center, which the late Alandria Williams put a lot of labor into, Susan Williams and Samir and some others also. And then the Beautiful Solutions is also held down by Rachel Plattis and Eli Fagali. And we just want to call all those amazing people's names into the space for helping us gather these amazing solutions. So, and we will provide those links as well. So I'm back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hope you had some good conversations and some time to dig into at least a couple of these awesome solutions, awesome examples of solidarity economy, examples of where people are building and resisting capitalism and building alternatives to capitalism and envisioning a post-capitalist society. So we're really excited to hear back some highlights from your conversations. So if you could drop in the chat. Oh yeah, and just a quick reminder to rejoin after breakout rooms. We always have to rejoin our interpretation line. So go to the globe at the bottom of your screen and make sure you're in the line, either English or Spanish, whichever one you want to speak and hear. And would love, and there's a captions link in the chat if you want to follow along captions there. You can always also do it in the Zoom app itself. Great, so now that we're all set up, would love to hear some highlights from your juicy conversations. So what were some of the things that were mind-blowing? And just drop like a quick summary or a quick thought in the chat. What was mind-blowing in your group?
I guess I'll volunteer. My name is Ken. Wonderful to meet all of the folks. I was in group C4, I think the main group that consists of Francisca, Lisa, Jennifer, and myself. I don't think we came up with sort of nothing kind of percolated up to mind blowing, but there was some really surprising. So the variety, I think, for us was very, very interesting. There are a couple of, obvious things. I mean, I think the food co-ops kind of was what was expected, but I personally found the community schools movement and the Arts City Defenders, a legal co-op, very fascinating. The other people in my group, feel free to add or subtract. Thank you.
Can you pick one of those and just give a quick summary and why you thought it was so cool?
Yeah, so I think this community schools movement for me, because I'm an educator right now, especially with the pandemic, is really, I think, my local public schools movement is kind of ripe. But again, kids are not, at school, and what's happening at the school with especially low-income first-generation kids falling off the, it's just really, I think, challenging to see how we're going to revive the public schools movement. So I think this might be, I'm inspired to consider what they're doing. So I'll leave it out.
And for folks who don't know what community schools are, it's about bringing different services and amenities into the schools. So it's like where parents and families already are, you can bring doctors and healthcare workers and food service and wraparound services, social services into the schools. So I see something here about Chantier Network, right, in Quebec, which is this network and hubs of different ways to support solidarity economy all throughout Quebec. I see in the chat something about Gaviotas, which has been living in a self-sustaining regenerative community for 60 years without weapons. That's right. Other things I see in the chat, the Green Bay Packers, right, which is actually owned by the community. It's owned by the fans. It's not owned by some owner, right, which most sport teams are, but it's actually owned by the fans. It's great. Let's see, what else do I see in the chat? This idea of participatory budgeting, that lots of people could work together to define what our budget, what our municipal, like local budget looks like, how we spend our tax dollars. Yeah, awesome. I see one about mobile home cooperatives, and yeah, that's an example where folks who live in the mobile home are actually able to pool their resources with other folks living in mobile homes and purchase the land. Mobile home parks can be a very extractive, like predatory financial model, like really hard on folks. And so, yeah, this offers a way for people to actually own not only their trailer, but also the home underneath. Or the land underneath. So let's see, what else are we seeing in the chat? Lots of really good stuff. More Quebec, mind-blowing, more Green Bay Packers, awesome. The ocean farming, yeah, some really cool ways of being sustainable and growing food in the ocean. Let's see, lots of really good stuff in the chat. We explored the concept of a diversity of diverse voices and how do we make sure that the voices of the least seen and heard are included. That's really important. Thanks for lifting that up from your conversation. Thunder Valley Community Development Corporation, a project rooted in honoring ancestors, right? Yeah, Indigenous-led community development group. So many amazing things that you've lifted up in the chat. Thanks for doing that. We're gonna go next to do this word cloud together about what is our recipe for building solidarity economy. So what are the ingredients that you noticed that would go into making these things possible? What makes these possible? What ingredients would you put in your solidarity economy stew? And we're going to build a collective recipe together. So you should see it's the same link that we've been using. But I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat again. And Hafida, if you would help me bring that up on screen share so that we can see as people are answering, that would be awesome. So if you go to the Poll Everywhere link, you can enter your ingredients like one word at a time or one ingredient at a time, and those will show up here. So what makes these possible? What are the ingredients that go into these solidarity economy solutions. So I'm seeing trust, community, collaboration. I'm seeing vision, diversity, yeah, diversity of experiences, voices, seeing knowledge and care, the values, yeah, the solidarity economy values that we started with. Sharing, yeah, sharing information, sharing access, relationships, innovation, connection. Lots of really good things coming into this recipe. Shifting, education, redistribution, seeing technology, yeah, labor, yes, absolutely, lots of work. Resistance, absolutely, yes. Grassroots, love is getting bigger, that's good. Listening's getting bigger. All right, let's go ahead and lock that. Thanks so much for adding to this recipe, and we'll definitely share this back out with everybody after the session. All right, so where we're headed next is we want to know what your next step is. We want to think together, and so we're going to stay in the poll everywhere poll, and we just want you to think about, you know, what can you do next? What can you do to build the solidarity economy where you are? There's lots of different ways to get started, even if it's just, you know, you want to learn more, or you want to have a conversation about what you learned today with someone in your community, someone in your organization, someone that you work with, someone that you organize with. Maybe it's that you are already working on a project and you want to share it, you know, or you want to get some more support for it. But we want to know your next step. How are you going to take some of what we did today and continue to build the solidarity economy where you are? All right, so lots of good things coming in. Teaching a course that brings in SE values, that's awesome. Read more of those beautiful solutions, great. Talk to my neighbors, deepen relationships, mutual aid, supporting a local community land trust movement. Research, I saw self-study earlier. Listening, yeah, good. Education, all right. Attending a meeting. You know, what's most important is that everybody just takes a second to think, what can I commit to doing next to really help build this vision and help us get there? Strike funds, organize, connect with other parts of the solidarity economy already moving. Yeah, maybe you want to do some mapping of like what are the current solidarity economy practices in the area that I'm in, and how do I, you know, get to know them? How do I help them knit together? Supporting others in the community. I'm doing it, joining local co-ops, learning more, talking to people who are doing SE. Yes, great, that's good to hear. Credit union, exchanging phone numbers. This is so good, just keep them coming in. And we're gonna go ahead and lock this and come out of screen share, but keep them coming in the chat if you have something that you haven't gotten to share yet and you wanna share. All right, we're so excited to have gotten to be with you in this time. What we want to do next is just invite you to think about how this went for you. What was it like? We know we had, you know, a little bumps in terms of the logistics, but at the same time, it's really important to center language justice and interpretation in the captions. So we really appreciate everybody's patience in making that possible. We want to hear from you what your appreciations and any changes or tips you recommend. So we're going to put a link to an evaluation form and also just welcome you to drop a couple appreciation or thoughts in the chat right now. And we also, yeah, feel free to jump in.
I see Kim's hand is raised. I'm not sure if Kim needs something.
Oh, that was when I thought we were verbally reporting out from our groups. So sorry, I forgot to put my hand back down.
Thanks, Afida, for catching that. So yeah, we thanks for sharing, for the folks who are sharing their appreciation so far. This is really helpful for us. This is the second time we've done it, and we really take feedback to heart, and we're gonna take this, and as we share these materials out and think about what do we do after this, this feedback is gonna be really helpful. So thank you. We also wanna invite you to consider, we did this workshop today for free. We didn't charge anything to anybody who participated. We want you to consider potentially donating to the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. That will help us organize things like this in the future to pay for interpreters and captioners and tech support, and all the things that make it possible to do really great online workshops. So consider donating to SEN. I put a link to the chat in the chat for that, and keep those appreciations and changes coming in the chat, and also in the evaluation form.
David, there
right.
was a question earlier. This is Hafiza. There was a question earlier about whether this particular workshop will be offered again in the future.
That is something that those of us who planned it, Mike and Emily and I, we're gonna take all the evaluations and do some reflection, and then we'll let you know. But by signing up, if you signed up and you said yes, you want to be on our mailing list, then you'll definitely hear from us when this is offered again. And there's also other opportunities to learn, to go deeper into learning about this stuff, and we want to be able to share those out with you too. So you'll have it. We will follow up with a follow-up email, and we'll give you a chance to sign up for our mailing list again if you didn't already. I'm going to put this invitation to share appreciations, the evaluation form, and the donate link in the chat one more time. And then I'm going to kick it to Mike. Help close us out. Thanks for sticking on a little longer than 6, y'all. Really appreciate that. All right, Mike.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, David. And thank you all for attending, for joining us, for sticking with us, for holding this time together. We really appreciate it. We appreciate all the appreciation that's, and changes and notes being lifted up in the chat. And we really appreciate the evaluation survey. If you can have some time, take some time to fill that out, that really gives us some good feedback on how this session went, how this session was shaped, and what we can do to improve it. So with that, I will just close us on those 3 breaths. So we're just going to take 3 breaths together. So first breath, breathe in. That's 1 for showing up today. Second breath, breathe in. That's 1 for everybody else who showed up today. Third breath, breathe in. And that's 1 for being powerful together. So pick up your face, pick a face on the screen, send that person that you're looking at some love, jazz them up, jazz them up, jazz them up. Give them all the love you got. You can go ahead and unmute that mic. You can throw emojis at them. You can hit emojis in the chat. It's just go crazy now. We are.
All power to the people.
All power.
When I went down to the rich man's house and I took back what he stole from me, took it back.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Akita. Thanks, Anna. Elizabeth. Thanks, our anonymous cashier. We really appreciate y'all.
Everybody who showed up and participated.
Under my feet, gonna